Today I thought I would reminisce a bit about my first ever psychedelic experience. And this happened many years ago. I was in my early 20s. And as you know, most men in their early 20s, we kind of just gallivant around at night, smoking weed, drinking a little bit of alcohol. I didn't get up to anything really bad, but it's just the usual stuff. And, sometimes we would buy weed. There's nothing wrong with smoking a bit of marijuana, but we would buy it from a place that used children as a front to sell it, and that is inexcusable. And in Australia, we have this word, a yobbo. It was a bit of a yobbo environment that I hung out with, and generally we would just get in our cars and drive around and do whatever, having fun and whatnot. What we called fun at the time, at least. But one day, my friend offered me to smoke magic mushrooms in his bong. And I just said, yes, of course, I'll just try it out. I was actually curious about psychedelics. But if you're listening to this, you probably have an objection in your head right now. That is, well, you can't smoke magic mushrooms in a bong. I didn't even know that, but I just smoked it anyway. And what is quite obvious now in retrospect is that it wasn't magic mushrooms at all. So it's a little bit of a mystery. I'm actually very curious what this substance was, because it was very psychedelic in nature, as I'll describe just in a little bit, but also it was quite different from other psychedelics I've done in the since then. So I'm really curious actually what this psychedelic was, but what happened is very shortly after inhaling it, it was very, very strong, and I had a pretty much, I would say, an out-of-body experience. My actual body kind of got a bit woozy, and I believe I fell on my side on the back seat. And then, really classic, I'll put some images on screen now. I can remember it so clearly. Really classic images of just this universe zooming out in this spiral fractal kind of way. Maybe you've done this as a child. It's a fun little exercise to do every now and then, where you think how small the Earth is. First of all, think how small you are on the Earth, and then think how small the Earth is in the universe. And then, if you're interested in physics, the predominant prevailing theory right now is that inflation theory, which says that we are one bubble universe inside an exponentially ever expanding universe. So if you understand what that means and you think about it, it's just we are one tiny speck inside of a tiny speck inside of a tiny speck, and really this just goes out to infinity. And that is what was happening in my mind in a really beautiful, deep way, where I was just zooming out and out and out, infinity, 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 and in that process just feeling smaller and smaller and smaller as myself. My importance was absolutely 1 over infinity to the power of infinity. That kind of thing. If you're into mathematics, which I was pretty good at maths. I was doing calculus at university and I did math specialist at high school, so maybe that's why I was having these sorts of experiences. But all of that was interesting, but there was a very predominant undertone there that had an extra meaning to it, which was my deep sense of wanting to be good. So earlier in my life, I had a little bit of awakening of some kind. I will call it a Christian awakening. In my mind, I would say I had been born again because I discovered something in myself that was, related to Christianity and spirituality. But after some time, I actually stopped becoming a Christian. But still, deep inside me, there was something that I wanted to be good. And this experience really made me feel, what does it mean to be good? Because, as young people as well, you tend to be quite ambitious and want to really change the world for the better. And I wanted to make the world a better place. I wanted to spread goodness. But with this whole zooming out thing and seeing how small of a speck I am on Earth and how small of a speck the Earth is in the big grand picture, these questions come up about what is really the point of being good? Even if I'm the goodest person that I possibly could be, I'm not going to influence society in some massive way, really. And even if I do, the Earth isn't going to be around for that long. The Earth is just, in the grand scheme of things, the Earth won't even be here for a long time. And if there is perhaps a multiverse of just intelligent life everywhere, my personal goodness is not going to be affecting the grand scheme of things in any meaningful way. And this was really interesting. It wasn't like a bad trip, but it was bringing up deep questions of, why am I good? Should I keep doing this, or should I just be selfish? I'm not sure how long this experience actually lasted, but I don't think it was more than 10 minutes. And afterwards, when you come out of an experience like that, it is not most people's experience to have utter clarity about what just happened. And actually, there was a lot of confusion. I was in this state of sort of feeling that deep down I want to be good, but really, what is the meaning of it if it's not going to affect the external world in any meaningful way? So there was a lot of confusion there. And I'm going to sort of talk about now, since the years then, how I came to terms with all of this. But before I talk about that, what is more important is when I came out of that experience, I had the confusion in my mind. I didn't know what the future held. I really had no idea. But the important thing is that still I knew, and I had that deep intention of choosing goodness, even with that huge uncertainty about it having significance at all. So that is the big thing that I hope really as many human beings in the world can come in contact with as possible, that even when they don't know what the future holds, even when there is deep uncertainty, deep doubt, deep confusion, that you still choose goodness just for the sake of choosing it, because it has its own intrinsic value. That is the important thing. But just to finish off the video now, having covered all the important stuff, how I sort of mentally integrate that experience is by saying your individual consciousness, it cannot really affect the external world in a meaningful, significant way to the whole edges of existence, because it goes on for infinity. But just as if you take your own personal body and zoom out, you can keep zooming out for a long time, an infinite amount of time. You can also zoom in an infinite amount of time. There are so many cells in your body, so many atoms in a single cell. And then really that's interesting. When we dig down deeper, the physics that we have today really gets fuzzy very quickly with quantum physics and then perhaps string theory. We don't really know what goes on. But on a spiritual level, when you zoom inwards, you can find infinite dimensions inwardsly as well. And inwardsly, if you choose goodness, you can access infinite goodness. And that has such a deep existential value that it is really worth pursuing.